Wow. Welcome to Season of Change, transforming your life by the power in the Word of God. I am your host, Evangelist Joseph Jeremiah. I have my guest here, Jane, from Indiana, from United States of America, a coach, a great experienced man about concerning parenting and how to bring up our children in adolescent age. He's an author and he's a great parent, has wife and children, and God has blessed him so much with a lot of wisdom that will be impacting upon all our audience this afternoon in order to grow our children to become a better society. So welcome, Gene, to
Thank
Season of
you.
Change.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Looking forward to it.
Wow, thank you so much. Welcome. We appreciate your time being on this program. So quickly, let's go to our topic. We have the topic we're going to be discussing this on this episode: parenting with focus on preteen and teenagers. So we are going to be asking some few questions. We're going to be asking our guests some few questions. That's Jim White, and we're going to be asking him some few questions. While we know that he's capable and able to give us his own submission on those questions. So the topic, how do you come about this topic, parenting with focus on preteen and teenagers?
And that's a great question. I'm interested in all family enrichment, but it felt like that the parents with teens and preteens, there's just a lot of issues there, and a lot of parents struggle when their children grow into those teenage years. And ultimately, I would like to be able to. I've published a book around parenting teenagers. Ultimately, I'd like to be able to have books that cover the whole range of parenting, but I had to pick a place to start. And those teen years just felt like there was a lot going on there, and there was a lot of conflict, a lot of questions. And so it felt like a natural place to start the process to get in and help. In other words, those parents seem to be the most interested and active in looking for help. Is when they're preteens and teenagers. And it's around everything from social media and and screen time to, anxiety, to doing well in school, to, the teens tend to not listen as much. They don't talk as much to the parents. And so there's this disconnect there. So just all of those issues sort of led me to feel like, okay, this is the best place for me to start this particular practice.
Wow, thank you. That's a great one. So let's quickly move into our questions. Or we have the first questions for you here. How can a parent effectively communicate with preteen or teenagers in building a trust relationship and understanding? How can they build this communication gap?
Yeah, it's communication and connection is a big issue with teenagers. Um, when they grow into those teen years, there's this natural process that starts to happen where the teen pulls away from the parent a little bit, because they're becoming independent. They want to see themselves as independent, and as they pull away, the parent then feels that disconnect, and the communication then will break down a little bit. So, and actually, one of the three fundamentals I teach parents is all around building connection, which helps to facilitate that communication. And so a couple of the strategies that I like to encourage parents to think about, one of the best ones is just being curious. When you talk with your teen, ask questions, be curious, and not just questions that are results oriented. In other words, what'd you do last night? It's more of trying to get a sense for what they believe, what they like, what they don't like. What's your favorite music? Why do you like them so much? Or you ask about their friends. You've got a friend that you've had since the second grade. Why do you think you guys get along so well? You're asking questions that allow them to share a little bit about who they are as a person. And as you do that, the communication, that teen will open up to you a little bit more. Um, and that's, the so the key to facilitating that communication is just building that connection. And then that puts the teen in a position where they're more willing to open up to you as a parent. Another great one I love to share with parents is just have some fun with them. Be playful. It's a great way to engage, build connection, which will again create that relationship to the point to where the teen's willing to open up and talk a little bit more. So, go play, play card games together or play video games with your teens, do things that engage with them in a playful way. It's another great way to build connection with them. And then, to be honest, another one that sometimes parents struggle with is just being present with their teen. As parents, we're busy. Parents have phones as well, or maybe they work from home. And so a lot of times the parent just isn't available to the teenager, and the teen starts to feel like they don't matter. And when they feel that way, they tend then to close off and not talk as much. And so if you really work on being present when the teen is with you, give them your attention, and you'll be amazed at how much they'll open up and talk to you more. So those are 3 different ways you can work to build that connection and help to increase and open up that communication.
Well, thank you so much. Number 2 questions. What strategy can parents employ to set a reasonable boundaries, teen and preteens?
So there aren't any boundaries for what was that again?
So what are the strategy they can employ, parents can employ to set a reasonable boundaries, their teenagers or for their preteens?
So, creating boundaries,
Yeah.
is another interesting transition that I encourage parents to think about. And it's the transition between control and empowerment. When our children are little, parents tend to control everything that happens. You decide, when they eat, when they go to bed, what clothes they're wearing, you decide everything. But as that child moves into their teen years, there should be this natural transition of that control to the child. The child should start to own and manage their own life a little bit more. Now, with that comes this conflict around boundaries, because the parent wants to lay in some, I'll call it boundary, like a curfew. They're supposed to be home at 10 o'clock at night, let's say. And the teen doesn't honor that. Well, part of the process is you want to empower that teen to make better choices. And it's a different mindset. You can't make them do something, but you can empower them to make a better choice. And part of it is engaging them in the process of deciding what the boundaries are. And that's a different, again, so we're not trying to control it. We're empowering them and saying, okay, we should have a boundary on Friday night when you go out with your friends. You need to be home at 10 o'clock. Well, the child may say, well, no, I feel like I'm okay to be out to 11. But if back to your original question about communication, if there's a good relationship there, they can have a discussion about it. And the parent can share, I don't know that I trust you to make that better choice, and to make good choices when you're out. But what happens then is, when you think from an empowerment standpoint, the next piece of that is, what can we do to help make me feel more comfortable as the parent? What can we do to make me feel like I can trust you? In other words, how can you build trust with me? And then you come up with a plan, what the child can do. Child, maybe I'll call you, at 10 o'clock, tell you where I'm at and tell you when I'm heading home. I mean, you develop a plan together, and then the child's bought into that boundary. When you think about, they have some ownership of it, and they're much more likely to honor it then at that point. So it starts with taking on the mindset of, how can I empower the child to make better choices? And if you think about it, the reason the parent puts that boundary there is because they're afraid, there's fear that the child's going to make a bad choice, and that they're going to do something that's either gets them hurt, gets them in trouble. I mean, so, they're fearful at that point. And part of my message to parents is to shift from parenting from a fearful place to parenting from a love-based place. We want to be grounded in love as we parent and try to move away from fear. And that helps to put parents in a better position to parent and try to empower that teen to be better, to make those good choices. So a little bit of a long-winded answer, but hopefully that hits a few chords.
Well, thank you, Jim. Thank you. So another question is this: how do you navigate delegated balance between giving your child an autonomy? Giving a child an autonomy, how can you navigate giving them a balance?
Between giving them autonomy and allowing them some choice and not in maintaining that control. Well, and that's the big question. And there's and the parents have to think in terms of, I like to use the idea of it being a journey. And so, with each day that goes by, that child is growing, they're learning, they're becoming more capable. So something that you felt like they weren't able to handle 6 months ago, today they will be able to handle. And so part of our role is to be able to sort of judge that and have a sense for that, which that's where the connection is so critical, because the more connected you are to the child, you have a better sense of their readiness, and where they are. It's when you feel really disconnected from them, it becomes hard to know when do I give them the ability to manage that particular item. But, like schoolwork, for example, a lot of times parents will manage their children's homework. But at some point, you should turn that over to them and the child to start managing it on their own. But the big question is, when are they ready for that? And that's where the closer you are, and if you're curious, you ask questions, you start to get a sense for where they are in that process. And to be honest, sometimes you have to give them a little control, and they may make a mistake or two. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, because they learn. It's a chance for them to learn as they go through correcting. If they cause some circumstance that's bad for them, there's a consequence for a mistake they made. That's part of the learning process. And so again, a parent has to be okay with that child maybe struggling and falling down a couple of times. And then you just empower them. Take the class example. Let's say they take over and they're going to manage their own homework and studying and that, and then they get a bad grade on a test. Rather than the parent, applying guilt, if you will, and then jumping back in to rescue the child, you say to them, wow, that's kind of a bummer. What could you do different next time you think that'll make it work better? I ask them that question, let them think about it, let them come up with a new plan. What didn't work this last time? What didn't work very well for you? How could you, what about going and getting a tutor? You just start asking them, and that's more of an empowerment approach, because you want to teach the child to be thoughtful. You want to teach them to solve their own problems, because those skills will serve them forever. And that's in these situations and circumstances that come up through those teen years are just opportunities to teach those more life skills. If you take that approach of, how do I empower them to be their absolute best?
Well, Jim, that's a great summation. We appreciate that. Well, we'll be moving to the next question. So, what roles does active listening play in fostering strong parent and teen relationship?
Say that again. So what roles do what?
What role does active listening plays in fostering a strong parent-teen relationship?
So what? I'm sorry, I missed that one word again. I'm having trouble. So what role does?
What role does active listening what role does active listening plays in fostering a strong relationship between a parent and a preteen?
So yeah, it's about building that strong relationship. It's that's the one of the key things, obviously, is building that strong relationship. And it's the parent has to be very intentional. That's one thing I would say about it, is they have to lean into that and make it a part of their daily practice. Look for opportunities to build connection and to develop that relationship. And sometimes we get busy and then they don't have they get distracted, and so they aren't paying as much attention as they should. But so one thing, for parents is to be very intentional. And I encourage, and again, I talked about the idea of a journey. The parent needs to grow and learn as well. And so this parenting process will allow that parent to become a better person as they go through it. They'll learn to build connection. They'll learn to be present. They'll learn to have compassion and forgiveness. I mean, those are great. Anyway, I talked about being love-based, and the idea of forgiveness and compassion and gratitude, all of those fit right into that. And having that love-based mindset and viewing your teen, and parents have love for their children, but they don't always act out of that love. So sometimes they act from more of a fearful place. And so, being very intentional about choosing to be love-based and trying to stay grounded in that is just critical to being able to build that relationship with the teenager.
Okay, let me just, still on this question, how can parents improve their listening skills?
Listening skills? Yeah, it's interesting. It's a lot of times we want to share our thoughts and our opinions before the other person has even finished saying what they're saying. We start thinking about, what are we going to say? And I would throw out this idea of being curious, which I mentioned earlier, is a great way to improve your listening skills, is to really try to be curious, try to understand what they're saying. And with a teenager, let's say you ask them, what's their favorite kind of music, and who, what artist, and they tell you something. And then if they say something, it's like, well, what do you mean when you said this? That you're diving in a little deeper. And so you're really trying to listen and then ask that follow-up question. That's a great way. And one of the skills, again, we talk about being curious. Now, another one, of skills I work with parents, is the idea of acknowledge and validating what the other person is going through. So your teen, let's say they're upset. They come home, they're upset. Maybe something happened with one of their friends. And so they start to share that. The acknowledgement part is when you repeat back to them what you heard. You say, well, if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is that this, and this happened. And just by repeating that back, you've demonstrated that you were listening to them, right? And that causes you to really be more focused and more attentive as you listen. So that's the acknowledgement part. And then the second piece is to validate the emotional experience. And so you then say, and it seems like you're really frustrated about that. And then the teen may say, no, I'm not frustrated, I'm angry. They'll share that with you. And so you can say, oh, okay, so you've listened and asked a question, or made a statement that allowed them to share more about what's going on with them. So really trying to be intentional about acknowledging and validating is another great listening. You have to listen in order to be able to do that. You're giving them, you're repeating back to them what they said, and repeating back what emotion you sense they're experiencing. And it could be joyful. You could say, boy, you seem really excited about that. You could say that back to them. So I would say curiosity and then acknowledge and validate are 2 or 3 different skill sets that you can put in that'll help your listening.
Well, thank you so much, Jim. Another question is related to the questions on which I've asked now, but it's a bit different. And what are the effective way to handle disagreement with teenagers?
Say that one again, I'm sorry.
What are the effective ways to handle disagreement with teenagers?
Handle disagreements. Yeah. First, you have to know that there's going to be disagreements. And the first piece, as you mentioned, listening, is to listen to their perspective, because they have to know that they're being seen and being heard. And once you've listened to that, and this is another interesting challenge that I put out to parents, I say, then ask permission to share your perspective. So you say, okay, I kind of hear what you're saying. And if you've done a good job of being curious and acknowledge and validating, like we've talked about, the teen will be heard. And you could say, I really appreciate you sharing your perspective. Would it be okay if I tell you what I think at this point? So then the parent can go in and share their perspective. And the key then is to say, okay, and you even acknowledge, there's a gap here. We have a disagreement. There's a gap between what you think should happen and what I think should happen. How can we work to find a solution? And this is the key part, that works for both of us. It's got to work for the child, but it's also got to work for the parent. And so you can see how this is a lot different than just the parent controlling the situation and making the child comply. When they become teenagers, it needs to be more about how can we find a solution that works for both of us. And that parent takes on the role of empowerment in teaching the child to be respectful and to honor other people and to be a team player. Those are the kinds of skills that you're hoping to put in as you go through and solve something, and bridge the gap. And it's okay. I tell parents all the time, in a situation like that, there's a gap, and you tell the child, you say, you know what? I really want us to be able to bridge this gap, but right now I'm not comfortable. For something there, I just don't trust. I'm just not quite there yet. And so but you acknowledge that you want to try to get there. And so it's, how can we build a plan that makes me feel more comfortable, that help them build a plan that builds trust with me, so that 6 months from now, we can close that gap, and then that disagreement goes away, over whatever it might be. So I think it's those listening skills, allowing them to share their thoughts, and then, let them go first. And that's what I always tell parents, let your child go first so they feel heard. And then you can come in with your perspective, acknowledge the gap, and then work for a plan that works for everybody.
Well, thank you so much. Well, another question, I believe, is very technical here. How can parents stay informed about the social life of their teenagers without invading their privacy?
Their social life and their privacy. Is that what the question?
Parents stay informed about their social life without invading their privacy.
Yeah. And so, how do we stay connected? And to be honest, if you build that relationship and that connection with your teen, they will openly share information about their social life. You won't have to invade their privacy. In other words, you won't have to snoop or sneak or try to, go and look at their social media feed. They will openly share things with you. But the key is you have to build and develop that relationship first, so that you almost become a sounding board or a trusted confidant for your child. But you have to make that investment in the relationship. And so that is where I would encourage parents to go that direction, because if they, try to invade that privacy, it's just going to create all kinds of conflict. In other words, if they're snooping around their room or looking through their purse, or, again, searching on their phone, looking through messages, it's just going to create a lot of conflict. And so build a relationship, the team will open and share with you. The other thing that will happen is you'll have more opportunity to influence the team and their choices when you have that strong connection. And so with that, the parent will feel a little more comfortable, and they'll trust the team a little bit more. That's why we want to invade the privacy, is because we don't trust them. right? We're afraid they're going to make a bad choice. And by building that connection and empowering them to be their absolute best and empowering them to make good choices and, teaching character attributes, teaching them about, you know, gratitude and compassion and forgive, all of those kind of skills, then they're going to make better choices um, in their own social life as a result of that.
Wow, thank you so much. We just have two questions here to go. It's really happening a lot in our vicinity, in our environment. The questions I'm bringing now is questions about what is happening in our society today among our teenagers, among our youth, and it has become a very big issue, and
Yeah,
uh, and we need to be addressed. So, how can parents address issue related to peer pressures among our teenagers?
yeah,
How can
it-
parents address that?
yeah. It's there's a lot of issues, and a lot of it, and we talk about peer pressure that comes from. I'm going to back up. If the child feels that strong sense of connection, they will. That's a line of defense against peer pressure. And what I mean by that is the one of the fundamental fears that we all have is the fear of not belonging, or not fitting in to a particular group, right? And so if your child feels isolated, they feel a little bit alone, they're much more likely to succumb to peer pressure because they're trying to fit in, right? They want to be part of that group. If they feel a really strong connection to their parents and to their home, what happens is they don't feel isolated. And so when that peer pressure comes, if they say, you know what, that's not a good thing for me to do, they can say no without feeling alone or isolated because they have home. Home is always a safe place. And that gives, like I say, it's a line of defense for that teenager. They have more strength. They take that strength with them into those situations. And that strength gives them the ability to say no and resist that peer pressure. But it starts that foundation from the strength of the connection to home. And so if you think about it this way, part of what goes through the child's head is, I don't want to disappoint my parents because they love me and I love them. So I'm going to say no to this situation. They think that way when there's a strong connection to home. If there's not a strong connection to home and somebody asks them to do something, they don't even consider that. They just say, ooh, if I don't, drink this alcohol, I won't be part of this group. And that second piece of it is not part of the equation. So that's where what parents can do is deepen that connection, make the home a loving space, because when the home is full of love, the child feels that, and they then take that with them when they go out into the world. And again, it gives them strength in those difficult situations.
Thank you so much. Wow, you've answered, you've done justice to a lot of questions, and we are in the age of technology now. A lot of things are going on the internet, on the radio, media, a lot of things. And these things are catching up our youths, taking hold of them and making some youths not to be relevant in the life, though making some youth not to even have time for themselves. Though some people still take advantage of it, they may become a better person in the society, even to make better achievement in their educations. But a lot of people are using it wrong, and that is the issue of technology. So I want to ask you a question about that. And the question is a bit lengthy, so I want you to just take your time and listen very well so that you can understand my question now. So how do parents navigate the challenges of technology and screen time with teenagers? And to promote a healthy relationship with the digital device?
Yeah. It's the technology, social media is a huge issue. And actually, I have a workshop that I do, in-person workshop just around social media, for example. So what I would encourage parents to think about is that, first of all, you have to acknowledge the situation. And I think you said it, it's not that the technology in and of itself is bad. It's when we use it inappropriately, it becomes bad. And so that idea needs to be shared with your child. It's, I'm not against social media, but we have to be careful that it doesn't start to negatively impact you or negatively impact, your relationship with your friends or whatever. And so it's a matter of having that mindset of, okay, how do we get the most value out of it? Go towards the value. What's the appropriate use of social media or technology? What's that look like? And you ask the child that. What do you think? With the social media workshop, I'll have parents, I'll suggest to them, have your child go to their phone and say, okay, what do you think is an appropriate post on social media? And then ask them, what's an inappropriate post? Show me one that you think is inappropriate. Find one. What's wrong with it? What don't you like about this? What is it? So you start to engage with what's appropriate, good use, what's not, and just have a discussion about it. And then, but the whole goal, and again, you got to make sure the child connects with the idea is that you're there for them to get the most value out of it without it becoming a problem. And then you ask them, have you seen any of your friends? Have they done stuff that's maybe gotten them in trouble? What was it? What'd they do? So the key is to open up that conversation, and it's an ongoing process, because as the child gets older, they're going to they're going to be more involved with social media. A 12-year-old's different than an 18-year-old, I guess is what I'm saying. So it's an ongoing process, and it's an ongoing conversation. And to be quite honest, sometimes they get to be 25. I have adult children, and you can have a 25-year-old who's struggling with like an addiction almost to social media. And so it's how do I get in there and help them? Well, you just got to acknowledge the issue. And I always, encourage, think from a love-based perspective. How can I support and help them be better as a person? That's what you're after. But back to your original question, the parents, they have to acknowledge it. And I encourage them to work with their child in coming up with a plan around technology and how they're going to use, when do we get on the computer? When do we shut them off? All of that, work together with the child to come up with a plan under the premise that you're there to help them get the best value out of the technology.
Well, thank you, Jim White. Well, I was supposed to have asked you these questions before now, but I want to throw it to you now. How long have you been on this topic, talking or discussing on teaching on this topic?
Sorry, say again.
I said, how long have you been teaching on this topic of teenagers and adolescents issues?
Yeah, it depends. I've been a parent for almost 40 years now. So we have 6 children. So there's been a lot of practical experience. But it's been, as my children got older, and this is how I've gotten here, I just feel called to share some of the wisdom that I've gained over the last 40 years. And so over the last 3, 4, 5 years, I've engaged in this practice of the Family Enrichment Academy, where I, have a course, I've published a book and content, and it's just a matter of sharing that, the wisdom that I've gained over those years. So this is it's sort of it's falling that I've come to here in the last.
Wow, that's great. That's a great one. Thank you so much. I'm happy for you, and I'm so delighted that we have you on this platform. And you. I know that God is going to make you to be great, and you're going to be making a great impact in this generation. And I want you to just give us what are those things, maybe just maybe in a few minutes, some things that you just want to say about this topic. Maybe it's not part of our questions, but just I would just want you to say something, just a closing remark.
Just, one, yeah, one thing that I would throw out is it is a journey, and I encourage parents to think in terms of having a growth mindset. They have to open up and be willing to grow and learn and develop as well. And if you have that growth mindset, you will, things will work out. But having that growth mindset and being willing to, um, try things and explore and learn and be vulnerable with your children, especially the teenagers. I mean, I tell parents it's okay to tell your 16-year-old son, sometimes I don't know what to do with you. You're vulnerable, and you say, but I'm trying to learn. I'm working on it. And so it's that growth mindset is the first step, because if you're closed off, nothing will ever change, right? And so we have to be willing to grow and learn in order to have hope that the tomorrow can be different than today. And that hope is very powerful, but it starts with being open to grow and learn.
Thank you so much. So I want you to tell our audience how they can get in touch with you, how they can get your books, in case some people may want to have one or two questions they want to ask.
Sure. So my practice is called Family Enrichment Academy. And so the website's familyenrichmentacademy.com. So you can just go there. Like I mentioned, I publish content in a blog and a podcast as well on a regular basis. So they can, connect to the community there. The book is available on Amazon. It's called How to Be the Parent Your Teenager Needs You to Be. So it's available on Amazon, both digitally or electronically, as well as in a physical form.
Wow, thank you so much. So you mention your social media handle so that the people can connect you on it?
Again, it's all under familyenrichmentacademy.com. So I have like a Facebook page as well. And on Instagram, it's Family Enrichment Academy. If you search that, you'll find me there.
Wow, thank you so much. It's nice to have you on this platform, Jim White. And I believe we'll still be wanting or hoping to have you again and again on this platform, because we still want to hear more from you concerning this, because we know it is a very wide topic that we're discussing about, and it's what we need in this time that we are in this generation. A lot is happening in our society, even in many homes. It's happening not only in the African continent alone, but all over the world. And we need to rescue this generation on time with teachings that are meaningful like this. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we want to say to our audience, we thank you for as many that will watch this program after now. And we pray that this will be a very great, impactful message to every home, every parent, every mother, every father, and every teenager. And we want to remind you again that this is season of change, transforming your life by the power in the Word of God. And our host on this episode, his name is Jim White. He's a blessed man. Thank you so much. We want to I want to send my regards to your family. Say me well to them. Tell your wife that we so much thank her for allowing you to be on our platform, and great for your children. So we want to know, we would like me to meet you or to have you again on this platform. I'm having a thought in my mind, maybe in the month of March, if you will be available to be on this platform again.
Yeah, I'm sure we can make something work out. So it's been an honor, and I just really appreciate the opportunity to again share some of my experience. So thank you again.
So thank you so much. We'll be bringing the recording to a stop. Well, I said, this is season of change, transforming your life by the power and the word of God. Thank you. God bless you.